Noah remembered the nervous thrill of meeting new Brown University classmates who seemed impossibly smart, impossibly poised, and the quiet shame of knowing he had been planted there not entirely by merit but by Tate's relentless insistence. He'd imagined small victories, finding the best study spots, discovering quiet corners of the library, making a friend who wasn't just a passing shadow, but nothing compared to the surreal sensation of being placed next to Tate, the boy who had rewritten the rules for him without so much as a hint of strain. Every smile, every casual brush of the shoulder, every future whispered joke in class felt like an echo of Tate's invisible hand guiding his steps, a secret proof that he belonged somewhere he had no right to claim on his own. Tate could have simply paid for their schooling, covered every expense without question, and yet it wasn't money that had won the day. Somehow, against a father who had never been known to bend, Tate had overpowered him, carving out a space for the two of them that Terence had never intended to allow. Terence knew, he had always known, that Tate loved Noah devoutly, passionately, and with a fierce intensity that bordered on obsession. He had seen it in the way Tate's eyes softened when Noah entered a room, the almost imperceptible tension in his posture whenever someone else drew near, the way his voice changed just slightly when he spoke to or about Noah. He had watched the subtle tremor in Tate's hands when Noah laughed, the way his chest seemed to rise a fraction faster when Noah was near, and every time Terence felt that mix of awe and dread settle in his chest. It was a love that consumed Tate, that radiated in every glance, every gesture, every carefully measured word, and Terence had known from the very start that it was unlike anything he had ever witnessed before, and that made it all the more impossible to reconcile. Why, Noah must have asked himself countless times, would a man of wealth and power allow his son, an heir to a vast fortune and influence, to let this prince, Tate, sleep next to a penniless runt and secure Noah into their lives so completely? A boy with no pedigree, no leverage, and nothing to offer the family except his own heart. Terence had spent years trying to apply logic, persuasion, even veiled expectations, and still Tate's devotion had been unmovable, unyielding. He had seen doors slammed, arguments pushed to the brink, ultimatums delivered, and yet Tate remained resolute, immovable as stone. It didn't make sense by any measure, and yet somehow against every rule Terence had thought immutable, Tate's insistence, his quiet, unshakable, stubborn devotion had broken through. It was infuriating, awe-inspiring, and deeply, irrevocably real, and Terence knew that no amount of power, wealth, or carefully orchestrated strategy could ever fully undo it. Even now, when he tried to reason it away, to frame it as a fleeting indulgence or youthful folly, the truth pressed in with a force he couldn't ignore. Tate's love was absolute, and Noah, in all his penniless, fragile beauty, held a claim over Tate that no fortune could rival. Noah didn't know what arguments, threats, or manipulations Tate had employed, and for a long time he didn't even want to know. He only knew that the victory came at a price. A quiet tension lingered in the family, a fracture left in the wake of Tate's obstinacy. Noah sensed it in small things, in the sidelong glances, the clipped tones of relatives, the unspoken rules that had shifted around them. Somehow he knew that Tate had forced the change, and that in doing so he had created a rift he alone would have to bear responsibility for. Noah felt a mix of awe and unease. The world Tate had carved out for them was theirs, but it had been stolen from the careful order Terence had built, and the consequences, subtle or loud, would ripple through their lives in ways Noah couldn't yet measure. For now, he simply let himself sink into the certainty that they could be together, even if the storm had left its marks around them, invisible but unforgotten. At breakfast the next morning, Talia's eyes blazed with a rare, fierce determination as she confronted Terence. "If you keep Noah from Tate or from me, there will be consequences. Don't think I won't act." Her voice was calm but deadly serious, a warning that carried weight even in the cold hierarchy of the Blue family. Terence's jaw tightened, his face unreadable, but the tension in his shoulders betrayed his unease. He wasn't happy with being challenged, especially by Talia, but her words hit harder than any argument about legacy or protocol. Talia's expression softened slightly, but her voice stayed firm. "Noah makes Tate very happy. Let my sons be happy together, please. Isn't that worth something?" Rich men paid close attention when their wives became distant or unhappy. In affluent social circles, a wife was often viewed as an extension of a man's success and social standing. A strained marriage could invite gossip, damage reputations, and undermine the carefully cultivated image of stability and prestige. When a wife refused to share his bed or withdrew from physical intimacy, men like Terence often felt as though the foundation of the life they had built was beginning to crack. To someone who tied his identity to status, influence, and appearances, the loss of his wife's affection could feel as though his entire world were on the verge of collapse. Talia reached for Terrence's hand, gently threading her fingers through his before lifting it to her lips and placing a soft kiss on the top of his palm. "Please, dear," she said quietly, "have a heart, let our son have a little happiness." She gave Terrence a playful wink before leaning close and whispering something into his ear. A faint blush crept across Terrence's face. He cleared his throat and gave a reluctant nod. "Fine," he said with a sigh, "it's settled." Talia's smile widened. She affectionately kissed the top of his head before returning to her chair. "I've always said," she teased with a satisfied grin, "that when all else fails, a husband is much easier to persuade after a little romance and 69. Terrence shook his head, unable to hide the small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth, while the rest of the room exchanged amused glances. Noah, for his part, stayed quiet, feeling both the relief and the pressure of Talia's intervention. He watched Tate at the table, still flushed with desperation and exhaustion, and realized that somehow, against the odds and the weight of the family's expectations, he belonged, at least for now. Noah glanced over at Tate and the expression on his face caught him completely off guard. The color had drained from Tate's features, leaving him with a sickly green complexion. His eyes were wide as if he were struggling to process what he had just heard. Without a word, Tate abruptly turned and bolted from the room. The next evening the household seemed to settle back into its rhythm. The formal airs returned, the whispers grew quieter, and the Blue family resumed its carefully orchestrated appearances. But underneath the surface things had shifted. Noah's presence was no longer a quiet anomaly to be ignored or punished. He had earned a place tenuous and delicate but real in Tate's world, and unexpectedly in Talia's protective orbit as well. The sun was dipping below the horizon, casting the sky in a warm, golden hue as it prepared to make way for the moon. The house was filled with the comforting aroma of dinner cooking in the kitchen, a symphony of sizzling and bubbling that promised a hearty meal to come. The clock on the wall ticked away the seconds, each one bringing them closer to the evening's repast. Tate was sprawled out on his mattress, his body arranged in a semi-reclining position that was both comfortable and casual. His eyes were scanning the pages of his comic book, his fingers idly tracing the lines of the panels as he followed the story. His room was a testament to his love for comic books, the walls adorned with posters of his favorite heroes, the shelves filled with neatly arranged spines of his extensive collection. Noah was nestled between Tate's legs, his blonde head resting comfortably on Tate's chest. He was engrossed in his own comic book, his eyes wide with excitement as he turned the pages, devouring the story. His feet were bare, his socks discarded somewhere on the floor, and his glasses were slightly askew, a sign of his intense focus. The room was filled with the soft sounds of their turning pages, the occasional murmur of excitement or surprise as they reached a particularly interesting part of their respective stories. The atmosphere was peaceful, comfortable, a testament to the easy friendship that existed between them. Suddenly, the soft sounds of their comic books were interrupted by a noise that was distinctly out of place. It was a muffled thump, followed by a soft moan and then the unmistakable creaking of old bedsprings. Tate's fingers froze on the page, his eyes widening as he recognized the sound. He sat up straight, his body tensing as he listened intently. Noah, sensing the sudden change in Tate's body language, looked up from his comic book. His blue eyes met Tate's and he could see the discomfort written all over his friend's face. "Tate," he asked, his voice soft with concern, "what's wrong?" Tate swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing visibly. You don't hear that, do you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Noah listened intently, his brow furrowing as he tried to pinpoint the source of the noise. It took him a moment, but then his eyes widened in realization. "Oh," he said, his voice flat with understanding. "Yeah, I hear it." Tate let out a sigh, his body slumping slightly as he realized that Noah had indeed heard the noise. He put his comic book down on the bed beside him, his fingers tracing the edge of the page absently. I can't listen to this, Noah," he said, his voice filled with discomfort. It's my parents." Noah nodded, his expression serious as he understood the full extent of the situation. "I get it, Tate," he said, his voice steady and calm. "Let's get out of here." Tate looked at Noah, gratitude shining in his eyes. "Really?" he asked, his voice filled with hope. Noah nodded, his expression determined. "Yeah," he said, "let's go somewhere we can't hear that." Tate let out a sigh of relief, a small smile playing on his lips. Thanks, Noah, he said, his voice filled with gratitude. I owe you one. Noah smiled back, his eyes warm with understanding. No problem, Tate, he replied. That's what friends are for, right? Together, they stood up from the bed, their comic books discarded for the moment. They exchanged a look, a silent understanding passing between them. They didn't need to say it out loud, but they both knew they needed to get out of the house, away from the sounds that were making Tate's skin crawl. As they made their way to the door, the sounds from upstairs seemed to grow louder, more intense. It was as if the very walls were amplifying the noises, making it impossible for them to ignore. Tate's face flushed red, his steps quickening as he led the way out of the room. Noah followed close behind, his expression serious, his eyes fixed on Tate's back. Once they were out of the room, Tate let out a sigh of relief. He turned to Noah, a small smile playing on his lips. Thanks again, Noah, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what I would do without you. Noah smiled back, his eyes warm with friendship. You don't have to worry about that, Tate, he replied. We're in this together, right? Tate nodded, grateful for Noah's understanding. Together they made their way down the stairs, leaving the sounds of Tate's parents behind them. As they stepped out into the cool evening air, they both let out a sigh of relief. The world outside was quiet, peaceful, a stark contrast to the noise they had just left behind. They walked down the street, their steps in sync, their minds already filled with the adventures they would read about in their comic books, far away from the sounds of Tate's parents' bedroom. By dinner time, Tate and Noah had come back inside. Talia appeared to be in an exceptionally good mood. Terence was smiling as well, which immediately stood out to everyone at the table. Terence rarely smiled. In fact, Talia seemed so cheerful that she didn't even realize she was quietly humming to herself as she arranged her napkin in her lap. Across the table, Tate looked absolutely miserable. His complexion had taken on a faint green tint, and he avoided making eye contact with either of his parents. Noah, meanwhile, was struggling to contain his laughter. A snort escaped him. Talia looked up. What is so funny, Noah? Noah immediately pressed his lips together, but another giggle slipped out. Nothing. Talia narrowed her eyes. Noah. Noah wrinkled his nose. We heard you guys downstairs. The entire table fell silent. Talia froze. Noah made an awkward face and gestured vaguely with his hand. You know. Understanding dawned on her face almost instantly. A deep blush spread across her cheeks. Oh. Terence cleared his throat and suddenly became very interested in his dinner plate. Noah failed to suppress another laugh. Talia buried her face in her hands for a moment before peeking through her fingers. I suppose that's enough conversation for one evening. Tate looked as though he wanted the floor to open up and swallow him whole. The awkward silence, punctuated only by the sound of Tate trying to suppress a gag, was abruptly interrupted by the shrill ringing of the telephone. Mark called and Tate was jealous. I tried to de-escalate Tate's mood, but he scowled at me. You don't have to be jealous, I say anyway. Mark is just a friend, Maya's my girlfriend. He finally looks at me then. The anger drains just enough to leave something worse behind. What am I? He asks quietly. The question lands heavier than all the shouting did. I step forward and wrap my arms around him before I can overthink it. I lean in and speak softly into his ear, careful, deliberate. You're my special person, Tate, and we're never changing that. He doesn't move. Mark's older, I add. He's just someone I talk to like an older brother, someone I can ask stupid questions without feeling dumb. I pull back just enough to meet his eyes. And Maya's hot, I say plainly. She likes me. Tate exhales, slow and shaky. The jealousy doesn't disappear, I can still feel it humming under his skin, but he nods once stiffly like he's choosing to believe me even if it costs him something. That night I drifted into the spare bedroom, hoping Tate would be distracted enough not to notice. I started turning down the bed quietly, carefully. No, he said from the doorway. I froze. You promised, he continued, voice tight. You said you wouldn't be in this spare room anymore. I didn't want another fight, my chest felt too tight for one. I agreed to that one night, Tate. It's not a good idea, I said instead. What's not a good idea? He asked, irritation sharpening every word. I just think now that we're adults we shouldn't. He cut me off by taking my hand and pulling me into the hallway, not rough but firm, final. I didn't resist. He led me straight to his room and stopped at the doorway like he was staking a claim. "This," he said low and unyielding, "is where you belong." The way he said it left no room for argument, and I hated that a part of me knew arguing would only make it worse. "Come to bed," he said, "I can't sleep without you." His voice was soft enough that for a second, I almost forgot why I shouldn't be there at all. "Just for tonight," I said, already giving in. "Don't count on it," he replied, not unkindly but not joking either. "You sleeping in the spare room isn't allowed." "It's my bedroom," I try to reason with the green-eyed monster who has hazel eyes standing in front of me. "I forbid it, Noah, I forbid it," Tate shouted, actually stomping his foot like a frustrated child. "You forbid me?" I asked, laughing in disbelief. "Exactly," Tate snapped. "Tate Blue forbids you from sleeping by yourself for any reason. The sooner you get that through your stubborn little blonde head, the better it'll be for you." I couldn't help but stare at him. The sheer absurdity of hearing a grown man declare his own rules with such absolute conviction made it almost impossible not to laugh. Tate walked to his room and slammed the door. Around 9 in the evening, I knocked on Tate's room and opened the door. He rose a few inches off the bed, staring at me in the darkness while I walked towards him. He raised the blue duvet and I slipped in beside him as Tate's bigger body contorted around my frame. I lay stiffly at first, trying to keep space between us, but he shifted closer without thinking, like my presence was something his body expected. He tugged me in until my back was pressed to his chest. "You're always so warm," he murmured, half asleep. "Good night," I said, hoping to end it there. He wrapped his arms around me anyway, holding on like sleep would take me with it if he didn't. Within minutes, his breathing evened out, heavy and trusting. I stayed awake a long time after, staring into the dark, wondering when comfort had started to feel this complicated. His weight was a solid, sleepy warmth, a heavy quilt of muscle and bone. His breath hitched against my neck, a soft, rhythmic puff that smelled of sleep and the faint, clean scent of his skin. My name, or rather, her name, was a muffled syllable lost in the hollow of my shoulder. M. Tate's hands, those familiar long-fingered hands I'd watched throw a football, sketch a diagram, gesture wildly during an argument, were now moving with a blind, seeking purpose over the thin cotton of my t-shirt. They slid down my ribs, palmed the dip of my waist, then crept back up, his thumbs brushing the undersides of my chest. A jolt, white-hot and shameful, shot through me. Yesterday had been a fumbling, half-awake grope over almost as soon as it began. This was different. This was a slow, claiming exploration. "Tate," I whispered, the word cracking. I pushed against his sleepy shoulders, but it was like trying to shift a landslide. He only nuzzled deeper, a low groan vibrating from his chest into mine. "Get off, please." Tate was asleep on top of my thighs before I could fully process it, his weight sudden and grounding, pinning me in place like he decided I wasn't allowed to move. His hand came up over my mouth, firm and unyielding, cutting off my words, my protests, anything I might have said to create distance. The gesture wasn't violent, but it was controlling, final. My breath hitched hard against his palm, warm and uneven, and the closeness hit me all at once. His bare body pressed against mine, heat seeping into my skin in a way that felt immediate and impossible to ignore. It was overwhelming, his scent, his warmth, the solid weight of him, everything too close, too much. My body betrayed me. A sharp, confusing rush spread through me, heat curling low in my stomach, completely at odds with the thoughts racing through my head. I didn't want this, not like this, not from him, not after everything. But my body reacted anyway, responding to the contact, to the familiarity of him, to the way he always seemed to know exactly how to take up space against me. It made my chest tight, made my thoughts stumble over themselves. Because this wasn't love. It wasn't even kindness, it was instinct, proximity, habit, and still my body leaned into it before I could stop myself. Tate shifted slightly, the movement subtle but enough to press the reality of him more firmly against me, like he wasn't even aware of what he was doing, or worse, like he didn't care. His hand stayed over my mouth, keeping me quiet, keeping me there while everything inside me tangled tighter. The heat between us, the closeness, the way he held me like I was something he could just take when he needed, it blurred the lines I had tried so hard to draw. I loved how it felt when Tate's hand found my soft skin, hated that part of me still responded, still softened, still reacted like this meant something more than it did, because even now, even like this, I knew it didn't. He didn't hear, and in the tangled logic of his dream it was encouragement. With a sleepy, powerful shift of his hips, he settled more fully atop me, straddling my thighs. Tate wasn't just lying on me now, he was draped, a human blanket pinning me to the mattress. The hard line of his arousal pressed insistently against my hip through the layers of our pajamas, his loose sweats, my thin shorts. It was a blunt, undeniable fact. my stomach clenched, a riot of horror and a treacherous, unwelcome flicker of heat. Then his head lifted. In the gray pre-dawn light seeping around the blinds, his face was soft, eyes closed, lips slightly parted. He looked peaceful, beautiful. The face I'd loved silently, desperately for 10 years. He lowered his head again, but not to nuzzle. His mouth found mine. It wasn't a peck, it was a full, deep, sleeping French kiss. His lips were warm and surprisingly soft. And then his tongue, oh God, his tongue swept against the seam of my lips, a hot, wet questing stroke that had me gasping in shock. He fucked my mouth with his exploring, fearless tongue. The sound that came from him was a raw, hungry moan swallowed by my mouth. MPH Emily. The world narrowed to the points of contact. The crushing weight, the desperate grind of his hips against my side, the invasive, intimate dance of his tongue. His hands were everywhere, one tangling in my hair, his hard dick poking my thigh, his fingers sliding down to grip the back of my thigh, hiking my leg up slightly to better align our bodies. He was moving in a slow, relentless rhythm, each rock of his pelvis sending a shockwave through me. I could feel every inch of him, the hard heat, the bunch and release of muscle, the dampness of sweat starting to form where his skin met mine. I twisted my face away, breaking the kiss. A string of saliva connected us for a second before snapping. I tried to say, "Tate, stop!" I cried, louder now, panic shredding my voice, but Tate's fingers quickly muffled my words. He hummed fully asleep, a sound of pure uncomplicated pleasure, and chased my mouth, planting sloppy, open-mouthed kisses along my jaw down to my throat. His teeth grazed my collarbone. His hips never stilled. The friction was building, his movements becoming less languid, more urgent. The bed springs gave a faint, rhythmic creak. He was lost in it, in the dream of her, using my body as a stand-in, and the sheer, devastating wrongness of it felt like it was tearing my soul in two. I loved what Tate was doing to my body in his slumber, just not who he was dreaming of during his explorations. I bucked, trying to dislodge him, but my strength was nothing against his sleep-paddled determination. My pushes against his chest were futile, my hands slid on the smooth skin of his back. I was trapped utterly beneath the living, breathing manifestation of my own heartbreak. He mumbled again, the words slurry and hot against my skin. "Need you, so good, fuck so good." His hand, the one that had been grabbing my thigh, slid around to the front, his fingers dipping beneath the elastic waistband of my shorts. I froze, a silent scream lodged in my throat. This was crossing a line from which there was no return. The touch was clumsy seeking, but its intent was devastatingly clear. At the same time he ground down harder, a sharp, frantic thrust, and a broken, guttural sound was ripped from him. "HNGH Emily." The sound of her name, cried out with such raw need while he was buried against me, was the final shattering blow. Tears, hot and furious, spilled from the corners of my eyes, tracking back into my hairline. I went limp, not in submission but in a total failure of will. The fight drained out of me, replaced by a cold, hollow ache. I lay there, a statue of misery, as my bedmate, the boy I loved, moved against me, lost in a fantasy of someone else, carrying us both toward a climax I didn't want, but that my traitorous body was starting to echo with a pulse of its own. His breathing became ragged, panting puffs against my neck. His whole body tensed, a bowstring pulled taut. The rhythm stuttered, grew frantic, desperate. His fingers curled into the flesh of my thigh, biting in. He was right on the edge, tumbling over it in his sleep, in his dream, with me as the unwilling, shattered proxy beneath him. The final, shuddering thrusts of his dick against my thigh as he frauded us were a brutal punctuation. His body locked, a rigid arch over mine for one endless, suspended second. A raw, choked gasp tore from his throat. God. It was more a sob of release than a cry of pleasure. I felt the hot, sudden wetness bloom through the fabric of his sweats and my shorts, a shocking, intimate seep of heat against my skin. Then, as if every string had been cut, he collapsed. All his weight, the solid, muscular weight of a varsity swimmer, dropped onto me in a boneless heap. His head lolled into the crook of my neck, his breathing a ragged, gusting storm against my damp skin. The scent of him, sweat and sleep and sex, filled the air, cloying and inescapable. And in the wake of his stillness, my own body betrayed me with a vicious, final twist. A second wave of tension, one I'd been desperately fighting, crested and broke. It wasn't the same. It was quieter, internal, a sharp, convulsive clenching deep in my core that stole my breath and made my toes curl violently into the sheets. A thin, helpless sound escaped my lips, a strangled whimper that was immediately swallowed by the silence of the room. Heat flooded my face, a scorching wave of shame so profound it felt like my skin might blister. My hips gave one last, tiny, involuntary jerk against the now limp weight pinning me down, and then it was over, leaving behind a hollow, throbbing ache and a slick, mortifying warmth between my thighs that was entirely my own. Humiliation wasn't a strong enough word. This was a desecration. He had used my body as a warm, willing receptacle for a dream, and my own traitorous physiology had joined the charade, offering its own pathetic encore. The tears came freely now, silent and scalding, streaming down my temples into my hair. I cried for the violation, for the grotesque parody of intimacy, but most of all I cried because in those last few seconds, as my body spasmed against his, a sliver of that dark, forbidden part of me had liked it, had wanted it to be real, had wished with a desperation that sickened me that the name on his lips had been mine. The evidence of Tate's climax cooled slowly against my hip, a sticky, accusing patch. His breathing evened out, slipping back into the deep, untroubled rhythm of true sleep. He even sighed a contented little puff and nuzzled absently against my shoulder, asleep again, oblivious. He'd got what he needed from the phantom Emily in his arms, and now he was drifting away, leaving me here in the wreckage. I lay paralyzed beneath him, staring at the faint crack in the ceiling plaster I knew by heart. The room was getting lighter. A bird began to chirp outside the window. Normal morning sounds. The world was moving on while I was trapped here, soiled and shattered, under the peaceful weight of the boy who'd just broken my heart without ever waking up. Minutes ticked by, measured by the slow, steady beat of his heart against my chest. My mind raced in frantic, useless circles. Should I shove him off now, wake him and confront him? See the dawning horror in those hazel eyes when he realized it was me, not her, that he'd rutted against to completion. The thought made my stomach lurch. Or should I wait, endure this torture until he stirred on his own, and then pretend? Pretend I'd just woken up, that none of this had happened, that the dampness between us was just sweat. The choice was agony. Both paths led to a different kind of ruin. One thing was certain: the easy, uncomplicated relationship we'd had was gone. It had died in this bed, smothered under his weight and washed away in that shared, awful release. Whatever happened when the sun fully rose, I would be looking at a stranger, and he would have no idea why. Tate went back to sleep as nothing had happened. His body relaxed, his chest rising and falling in slow, even breaths, as if the bite, the yelling, the chaos from earlier didn't exist at all. He hadn't roused from his sweet, deep sleep, and the sight of him there, so completely unaware of everything, made my chest tighten. I quietly slipped out of bed, careful not to wake him, and headed to the bathroom. My mind was spinning. When he was awake, he was intense, overwhelming, sometimes impossibly demanding. But asleep, he was harmless, vulnerable, innocent, and yet it hurt. It hurt because of how normal it looked, how easily he drifted back into a dream while I carried the weight of everything that had happened, the biting, the chasing, the fear, the obsession. I realized something then: I couldn't let him sleep next to me anymore. Not tonight, not any night. I had to hold the boundary, even if it meant pushing him off the bed, even if he protested or whimpered in his sleep. It wasn't going to be easy. Tate's body was bigger than mine, stronger and more accustomed to using his size to dominate a space. But I reminded myself, physically smaller or not, my resolve mattered more. My safety, my boundaries, and my sanity mattered more than Tate's obliviousness. I took a deep breath, steadying myself, my mind settling into the clarity I needed. I wouldn't let him manipulate the night, the room, or my body with his presence. Not anymore. I had to protect myself, even if it meant feeling guilty or hearing his protests. For the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of control, a sense that I could reclaim space that was mine, even in a house where Tate's needs and obsessions had always overshadowed mine. I returned to the spare room at 5. The next morning at breakfast, Talia was talking animatedly about adding some curtains to the spare room, making it nicer, cleaner, and more attractive. I tried to listen politely, nodding along, when suddenly, clang, Tate slammed his fork on the table so hard it rattled the plates. "I thought we'd already worked this out," he barked, eyes blazing, his face red. I froze. We never really decided anything," I said carefully, trying to keep my tone calm, but Tate, of course, had already jumped to his own conclusion. "I thought it was hell no," he continued, leaning forward aggressively. "I thought I told you you're sleeping in my room." I shook my head, trying not to meet his intensity directly. "No, Tate, that hasn't been decided," I said softly. I turned back to Talia, continuing the conversation about the curtains and arrangements, hopping to smooth over the tension before it escalated. After breakfast, I started heading upstairs, thinking about my plans for the day, but Tate was quicker. He caught me in the hallway, grabbing my arm and yanking me toward the bathroom. "Hey Tate," I started, but he didn't listen. He pulled me into the bathroom and shut the door, holding it behind him. My pulse jumped. The bathroom on the second level was small, but it had everything I needed, thankfully, but his grip on my arm, the possessive glare in his eyes made my stomach churn. Space, his laugh was harsh, almost desperate, and it cut through the hallway like a blade. You're avoiding me, letting someone else or something else take the place that should only be mine. I won't let that happen. You belong here with me. His body pressed closer, heat radiating off him, a volatile mix of fear, fury, and need that made my pulse spike. I tried to step back, tried to carve a space for myself, but it was impossible. His obsession, his jealousy, wrapped around me like a cage I couldn't escape. I swallowed, heart aching, and whispered, "Tate, I'm not leaving you." "Not leaving me?" His voice cracked, raw and unsteady. "Then don't ever try to leave, don't even think about it. You're mine, I need you here always." I looked into his eyes, stormy, desperate, broken, and I realized something I couldn't ignore. Loving him meant never really being free. And yet, leaving him was impossible. The hallway felt smaller, heavier, suffocating. I didn't know how long I could survive his love, and neither did he. Tate's gaze never left me, dark and stormy, but there was something else in it too, a flicker of fear I'd never seen before. He didn't know how to reach me. I could feel it even in the weight of his grip and the heat radiating from him. He was desperate, trying to pull me close, but somehow I was slipping just out of reach, like a shadow he couldn't hold. Every step I tried to take toward independence, toward space, made him flinch, made his chest tight, made the raw edges of his obsession sharpen. I don't understand," he muttered under his breath, almost to himself, voice cracking. "Why are you pulling away? I'm right here, I've always been right here." His fingers dug lightly into my arms, not to hurt but to anchor himself to me, to anchor me to him. And I could see it. The panic, the terror of losing me, the knowledge that for all his control, for all his insistence, he didn't really know how to hold me without crushing me. I wanted to reach back, to reassure him, to tell him I wasn't going anywhere, but the truth was I wasn't sure where I stood anymore. Tate had always dominated the space, the bed, the house, the boundaries. I didn't realize I was giving up, and yet part of me feared that if I didn't push back, I'd be swallowed completely by him. He exhaled sharply, jaw tight, shoulders hunched, and whispered almost mournfully, "I and I alone," Tate hissed. "Decide when we're done. You can't just disappear from me like this. I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to reach you." There was always an exit. That changed after the power outage. Now Tate didn't sleep beside me. He slept on me, flat on his stomach, completely draped across my body like I was the bed and he was claiming it. His chest pressed fully into mine, his arms anchoring me down without even trying, one leg hooked over both of mine like a lock that didn't need a key. At first I thought it was temporary, a one-night thing. It wasn't. Every night since, it's been the same. I lay there now, staring at the ceiling, completely aware of him, every inch, every shift, every breath. His weight wasn't just there, it was constant, unignorable, like gravity had doubled and decided to rest entirely on me. He's heavier like this, I thought, not for the first time. I'd tested it before, tried to move just slightly, carefully, but even asleep Tate adjusted. His body would shift instinctively, pressing down harder, tightening just enough to keep me exactly where I was, not aggressive, not conscious, just certain, like his body knew before his mind ever could, like leaving wasn't an option. Tonight was no different. His nose was pressed flush against my neck, warm breath fanning across my skin in soft, steady bursts. It tickled almost, but I didn't dare move. Not anymore. I already knew what would happen if I did, and then I felt it, a faint shift in his expression. Tate was smiling, actually smiling in his sleep. It wasn't subtle either, it was soft, content, almost happy. His lips curved just slightly against my skin and a quiet sound left him, something between a sigh and a hum. Mwah. The noise was low, satisfied, like he'd settled into exactly where he wanted to be. My chest tight. "He's comfortable, more than comfortable," he sounded. Happy. Another small murmur slipped out of him, barely audible, followed by a soft exhale against my neck. His grip shifted slightly, not tighter but closer, like he was settling deeper into me. I swallowed, staring up at the ceiling again. This is insane. He used to need proximity. Now he needed contact. Full, inescapable contact. I tried just once more to test it, barely shifting my shoulder just enough to see if I could create even an inch of space. Immediately Tate's body reacted, not waking, not consciously, just adjusting, pressing down again. His leg hooked more firmly over mine, his chest settling heavier against me, his face pressing closer into my neck as another soft, content sound slipped from him. "Me know it." My breath caught. Tate went still again after that, breathing evenly out, smile still faintly there, like whatever dream he was having had locked him exactly where he wanted to stay. And I realized with a slow exhale that there was no getting out of this. Not without waking him, not without breaking whatever this was. I let my head fall back fully against the pillow, giving in, my body sinking into the mattress beneath both of us. There was no space, no exit, no movement, just Tate warm, heavy, smiling in his sleep like he'd found something he didn't want to lose, and me pinned beneath him, wide awake, realizing he'd made sure, without ever saying a word, that I wasn't going anywhere. Around 6 that morning, Tate shifted in his sleep, giving me just enough room to slip out from beneath him without waking him. I quietly made my way downstairs, brewed myself a cup of coffee, and settled in at the kitchen table with the morning crossword puzzle, enjoying the rare peace and quiet. The next afternoon, Tate's shadow appeared at the end of the hallway before I could even react. His jaw was tight, his eyes dark and stormy, and the jealousy radiating off him was palpable, a heavy, suffocating force that made my chest tighten and my stomach clench. His hands gripped my arms not roughly, but firmly, as if he feared I might slip through them, and I realized with a sinking certainty that he couldn't let me go, not entirely, not for a second. "You think you can just disappear into that spare room?" he hissed, voice low and dangerous, dragging me toward the small bathroom on the second level. My stomach dropped as the door swung open and he held it behind him, cutting off escape. Tate, I just need to," I started, but he cut me off, pressing closer until I could feel the heat from his chest and the tension in his muscles. "You're avoiding me, Noah. You leave our bed under the guise of giving yourself space. If you think you can pull away from me, forget it. I see it, I feel it, and I won't let it happen," he said, voice trembling with fury and something softer underneath: fear, need, desperation. I swallowed hard, my pulse racing. Every instinct told me to step back, to breathe, to claim even a sliver of space for myself. But Tate leaned in, eyes dark, unrelenting, a storm barely contained, and I realized something frightening. I couldn't untangle myself from him, not yet. Not while he burned with that obsession, that jealousy, that possessiveness that left me simultaneously terrified and unwilling to turn away. I swallowed again, eyes locked on his, heart hammering, and whispered, "Tate, I'm not leaving." His breath hitched, almost a sob, and the corners of his mouth trembled. "Then don't ever try to leave, don't even think about it. You're mine, I need you here, always." I looked into his stormy eyes, and for a moment I could see the boy he'd never fully grown out of, trembling under the weight of his own fear and jealousy. And I understood with a chilling certainty that this was far from over, and I wasn't sure I wanted it to be. I stared past him, grounding myself, reminding myself what was real, not the fantasy, not the longing, but the danger of mistaking closeness for safety again. Noah had been quiet all morning, avoiding Tate's usual teasing and hovering. He needed space, distance from the intensity that Tate carried like gravity, pulling him in despite himself. So he had gone to a tattoo parlor, a place he'd never set foot in before, a place that promised a temporary rebellion, a small act of control over his own life. He had heard the stories from a few seniors in high school: tattoos hurt a lot, and you had to be 18 to get one, but none of that had stopped him. None of them knew the one thing that would drive Tate insane, and Noah intended to exploit it carefully, deliberately. 2 hours later, Noah walked back into the house, a small white bandage wrapped tightly around his forearm. He didn't announce it, he simply slid into the seat at the lunch table, trying to act casual, but Tate's sharp eyes caught it instantly. "What's that?" Tate demanded, leaning forward with a low growl in his voice. His hands twitched toward Noah's arm before he could stop himself, his usual composure replaced by an almost feral concern. "What did you do? How did you get hurt?" "It's just a patch," Noah said, keeping his tone light, almost dismissive. "It'll heal in a few days, nothing serious." Tate's brow furrowed, his jaw tightened, and his eyes darkened. "A patch? What patch?" he repeated, voice rising slightly, the growl sharpening. "Noah, let me see, don't lie to me, you can't just— What did they do to you?" Before Noah could react, Tate's hand shot toward the bandage, attempting to peel it back gently at first, then more insistently as the worry and anger surged through him. "I need to know," Tate said, teeth clenched. "Tell me what's hurting, tell me." Noah pulled back, instinctively slapping his father's hand away. "I said it's fine, Tate, stop," he snapped, a mixture of irritation and nervous pride coursing through him. Tate froze for a split second, breathing heavy, eyes fixed on the bandage. His face was a mixture of fear and fury, a storm barely restrained. "Fine," he hissed, his voice low, trembling with frustration. "You think I'm going to just let this slide? Do you have any idea what you just did to me?" Noah stared, trying not to laugh at the intensity, but also feeling a strange thrill. Tate's reaction, high-strung, almost theatrical, was exactly what he had anticipated. The energy radiating from him was so strong it made Noah's own pulse quicken. Tate's hands hovered, trembling slightly like he wanted to check again but didn't dare, and his eyes darted from Noah's face to the bandage and back again, unreadable but fierce. "You're insane," Tate muttered, half in exasperation, half in awe. I can't believe you did this. Do you know what this means? What could this do?" Noah leaned back, feigning nonchalance, letting the tension build just as he had planned. He could see it, Tate's high-strung panic, the protective intensity radiating off him like heat. For the first time, Noah felt a small, victorious thrill. He had created distance, yes, but he had also proven something, that even in a simple act, Tate's devotion, his obsession, could be ignited and magnified 100-fold. Tate shook his head, muttering under his breath, packing just behind the chair. "You're impossible," he growled, voice tight, eyes darting between Noah and the bandage. I can't even, you're too much." Noah smirked faintly, letting the moment stretch, letting the chaos of Tate's emotions wash over the quiet lunchroom like wildfire. It was small, it was reckless, and it was perfect. A week had passed since the bandage had been applied at the tattoo parlor. Noah finally peeled back the gauze, revealing the fresh ink beneath. His first tattoo, small, precise, elegant, looked incredible. One word, just a single name, Brian. He stood in front of the mirror for what felt like an eternity, tracing the letters with his finger, turning his arm slightly to catch the light, admiring the way it had been etched onto his upper bicep. It wasn't just a name, it was the name he had chosen for the hidden part of himself, the part of him he'd never share, the identity he had kept secret for so long. The bathroom door suddenly rattled. Noah froze as he heard the knob turn, but the door wouldn't budge. "Let me in," Tate barked from the other side, his voice sharp, impatient. "No," Noah called back. "I said I'll see you at breakfast, Tate." Tate yanked at the handle with more force. Muttering under his breath, "Noah, stop being ridiculous, open the door." Noah ignored him, pulling on a sleeveless shirt that left the tattoo exposed. By the time he reached the breakfast table, Tate was already in the kitchen, packing, fuming, his jaw tight, eyes blazing. The table conversation started normally. Talia was animatedly describing a pediatric charity event at the high school when her eyes drifted to Noah's arm. "Oh," she exclaimed lightly, "nor is that a tattoo." Tate's reaction was immediate and volcanic. His fork clattered against the plate. His face went pale, then flushed red, eyes fixed on Noah's upper bicep. "A tattoo?" he shouted, standing so quickly his chair tipped back slightly. You actually did it, and why, Brian?" Noah lifted his arm slightly, letting the light catch the delicate lettering. "It's not just a name," he said casually. "It means something to me." Tate's face twisted in disbelief. "Just a name? Noah, do you have any idea what you're doing? You put someone else's name, someone else, on your body permanently. Do you understand what that means? Noah, what the hell is wrong with you?" Tate continued, his voice rising. "Why, Brian, you're literally branding yourself with someone else's identity, someone who isn't me, doesn't belong to us." Tate's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Who the fuck is Brian?" he demanded, stepping closer, voice sharp and raw. "Tell me right now, who is he? Why does he get a name on your arm before I do?" "Noah," Talia interjected nervously, "maybe we should." "No," Tate snapped, cutting her off. "I don't want maybe. I want to know, how could you even think Brian's name on your upper bicep? Do you know what that looks like? How does that feel? How does it make me feel? Who's Brian?" he demanded. Tate's eyes didn't leave Noah, burning with a mixture of fury, disbelief, and desperation. The tattoo on Noah's arm glowed in the morning light like a provocation, and Tate would not let it slide. He leaned forward, voice low and dangerous. "Who the fuck is Brian?" he demanded again, each word sharp and deliberate, a predator circling his prey. Noah didn't answer. He stared at his plate, trying to make himself small, hoping the moment would pass. But Tate was relentless, his patience gone, replaced by that raw, unyielding intensity Noah had always known but never fully feared until now. "I asked you," Tate said, teeth clenched, voice rising, "who the hell is Brian?" Noah's head flicked briefly toward Tate's mother, Talia, his tone casual but layered with a nervous edge. "Could I volunteer for the hospital, the pediatric event?" he asked, his knuckles cracking unconsciously as he tried to redirect the tension to anchor himself in something normal, something mundane. Tate's eyes narrowed further. He knew exactly what Noah was doing, trying to dodge, deflect, escape the confrontation without giving up the secret. His jaw tightened, and in one swift, almost imperceptible motion, his foot shot out under the table and kicked Noah sharply in the shin. The impact was deliberate, a controlled assertion of dominance. Noah jerked slightly, letting out a sharp inhale, but Tate didn't stop. He leaned closer, voice low, hoarse with the edge of a growl. Don't try to distract me, Noah. You think you can change the subject, hide behind your volunteering, your little distractions, but Brian isn't going anywhere, and neither am I your mine, and I will know everything. Noah tried to pull back slightly, but Tate's hand gripped his wrist under the table, steady and unyielding. He moved like a dog with a bone, teeth clamped onto the truth, and refused to let go. Every fiber of him was focused, every breath and movement taut with the need to unearth the secret, to force Noah to reveal what he had hidden so carefully. Who is Brian? Tate repeated, voice low and insistent, a growl vibrating in his chest. I don't care how long you've hidden him, how safe you thought you were. He's not taking you from me, and neither will I allow it. You can try to act casual, you can try to bury it under your arms, under your words, but I will have it, I will. And you're not going to escape this, Noah, not now, not ever. Noah's heart raced. The weight of Tate's gaze and grip was almost physical, pressing against him, confining him. He felt trapped and exposed, like a small animal caught under a predator's shadow. Tate's determination was a storm, relentless and consuming, and for the first time Noah realized just how little control he truly had over this man's obsession. Tate's knuckles were white where he held Noah's wrist, his eyes dark and focused like steel. Tell me who he is, he growled, teeth clenched, voice trembling with emotion and fury. Tell me everything about Brian, or I swear, Noah, you will not like what comes next. Noah swallowed hard, sensing the absolute impossibility of defiance here. Tate was relentless, unyielding, and utterly devoted. He had the scent of a hunter, a dog with a bone, and Brian's secret, Noah's most hidden identity, was that bone, and Tate could not ever let it go. The question wasn't curiosity, it was accusation, sharp, childish, and loud. Do you like Brian more than me? The way he said it, too fast, too needy, made him sound like a 10-year-old who just realized he wasn't the center of the universe anymore. I laughed. It slipped out of me, short and breathless, the wrong sound at the wrong time. Tate's face twisted in pain. Don't laugh, he snapped. Who is he? I tried to pivot, tried to soften it. Tate, drop it. He didn't. Instead, Tate poked me in the chest. Who is he? Each word was carved out slowly, over-enunciated, his jaw tight enough that I could see spit gathering at the corners of his mouth. He was vibrating with it, jealousy so concentrated it barely fit inside him. A friend, I said. A friend, he echoed, mocking. Funny how you didn't bother mentioning him. I felt it then, the panic under the rage, the terror he was trying to smother by being louder, meaner, bigger. You don't get to interrogate me, I said, steadier than I felt. His eyes flicked over me like he was counting exits, like he was already imagining me gone. We've been close for a decade and a half, he spits. I feel it land, something ugly flashes across his face, he seethes, but there's no love in it, it's sharp, wounded. That's what I'm worth now, he snaps, a placeholder until something better calls you. Tate. The phone rings. His eyes flick away from mine instantly, sharp and alert, locking onto the sound like it's a threat. Suspicion hardens his face. He drops his hands and lunges for the phone before I can move, jealousy already burning through him, fast, possessive, terrified of a name lighting up the screen that isn't his. I hope stupidly that it's a wrong number, a telemarketer, anyone, but the second the caller speaks, Tate's face changes. It's subtle, a hardening around the eyes, his jaw locked like something inside him just broke loose. Hello, he says. A pause. Then flat and cold, he's not available, call again, never. Tate doesn't wait for a response. He slams the phone back into its cradle hard enough to make it rattle and swears under his breath. Fuck it. The word hangs between us, thick and ugly. He won't look at me, he paces once, hand dragging through his hair like he's trying to tear the thought out of his head. I don't need Tate to say it, I know it was Mark, or Maya, someone who isn't him, and in that moment I understand exactly what scares him most, not that I'll choose someone else but that I already have the option. Was it for me? I ask, keeping my voice light, innocent, knowing full well I'm poking a hornet's nest. Tate doesn't answer. His jaw is tight, his back half-turned, clearly not in the mood to take messages or explanations. I stepped back, closing the door gently so he wouldn't fall further. I realized how little I really had a say in any of it. He didn't even have to be awake to dominate the space, and somehow I was entirely his. At 8 that night I stood by the spare room door, but Tate found me. No, he said from the doorway. I froze. You promised, he continued, voice tight. You said you wouldn't be in this room anymore. I didn't want another fight, my chest felt too tight for one. It's not a good idea, I said instead. What's not a good idea, he asked, irritation sharpening every word. I just think now that we're adults we shouldn't. Tate cut me off by taking my hand mid-step, yanking me toward the hallway before I could move. I planted my feet, twisting my wrist free, refusing to leave. His hands weren't rough, never rough, but they were unyielding, firm in a way that made it impossible to ignore. I pulled back, digging in, letting every ounce of stubbornness in me flare against his grip. My chest heaved. Every time he tried to pull me forward, I threw my weight against him, pressing my palms into his, straining, trying to wrench myself free. You're not going anywhere, runt, he muttered through gritted teeth, the sound of his heartbeat hammering through his chest as I could practically feel it through his hold. His strength was like iron, and yet he moved with a kind of careful precision that made it maddening. He didn't want to hurt me, he just wanted control. I kicked back, twisted, shoved, anything to reclaim my autonomy, my body resisting him with a ferocity I hadn't realized I could summon. Tate's grunt punctuated every tug, every shift of his muscles. Obey me, he rasped low, each word a growl, do as you're told. I spat a laugh of frustration, glaring up at him, hating how close he was, how he seemed to fill the entire hallway with this raw, unrelenting force. I was small, yes, but I wasn't about to submit. My limbs flailed, my fingers clawed at the doorframes, at the walls, at anything I could grip. 10 minutes felt like an eternity, 10 minutes of a physical war, our bodies locked in a contest neither of us would yield to easily. Each time Tate managed to pull me off a surface, I collapsed against him, my weight a protest he had to fight against. He groaned, a low, frustrated sound, and his grip never loosened. You're mine until I say otherwise, he growled, pulling me down the hall, and I bit my lip, forcing myself not to cry out, not to give him the satisfaction of a sound of surrender. I twisted, wriggled, and kicked, my every motion screaming that I wouldn't simply obey. Finally, after what felt like an endless struggle of wills, he managed to lead me straight to his room. My legs were sore, my palms raw, my chest heaving, but still I refused to let him have the satisfaction of total compliance. Tate stopped at his doorway, chest heaving, hands gripping my arms like stakes in the ground, his eyes dark and determined. He was panting, a low, frustrated sound escaping him, each exhale punctuated by the force he exerted to keep me moving. You can fight all you want, runt, he muttered, his voice thick with exertion, but I'm not letting you go, not now, not ever. I stared at him, defiant, trembling, a strange mix of anger and something else I couldn't name. He treated me like a stubborn child refusing to obey, and yet the power in his presence, the raw insistence in his grip, left me both furious and unnervingly aware of how small I felt against him. I struggled again, twisting, shoving, kicking, trying to escape the inevitable. Tate grunted, his breath ragged. Submit, just do as you're told, he demanded, and I glared, teeth clenched, muscles burning from the fight. But even as I resisted, even as my body screamed against his, I could feel the undeniable weight of his dominance, a pressure I had no choice but to reckon with. By the time we finally reached his room, I was exhausted, limbs aching, chest heaving, yet I refused to give him the satisfaction of yielding completely. Tate's hands remained firm on my wrists, guiding, corralling, insisting, his grunts and sharp exhales marking the rhythm of our battle. I may have been small, a runt in his eyes, but I had fought with every ounce of myself to resist. And though he had won the battle of moving me, the war of my will was far from over. This, he said, low and unyielding, is where I want you after dark. The way he said it left no room for argument, and I hated that a part of me knew arguing would only make it worse. Stay in bed, he said, I can't sleep without you. His voice was soft enough that for a second, I almost forgot why I shouldn't be there at all. I blurted out the first thing I could think of that would make Tate stop pulling me into his room. Mark offered to pay for my first year at Brown, I explained. Tate went completely still beside me in the bed. The room was dark except for the faint light coming through the window, but I could feel the tension roll off him like heat. What did you just say? Tate asked quietly. I hesitated. Mark offered to pay my first-year tuition, room and board too, at Brown. The silence that followed felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Then Tate sat up so fast the mattress shifted under me. He what? Tate snapped. He offered, I said carefully. It was generous. I told him I'd think about it. You'll think about it? Tate cut in sharply. You're thinking about letting some stranger pay for your life now. He's not a stranger, I said. He's my friend. Tate laughed harshly. Your friend? Noah, you met the guy like 5 minutes ago. That's not fair. No, what's not fair? Tate shot back, turning toward me, eyes burning in the dim light. Is some random guy swooping in and offering to pay $60,000 for you. It's not 60, I muttered. That's not the point. I rubbed my face, exhausted already. I didn't say yes, I said I was considering the offer. It was kind. You will not consider a stranger's offer, Tate said flatly. Why not? Because it's not normal, he snapped. People don't just throw that kind of money at someone unless they want something. My stomach tightened. He didn't ask for anything. Tate leaned closer, voice dropping into something cold. You really believe that? Yes. God no, he scoffed. Use your head. What is that supposed to mean? It means, Tate said, glaring at me, he probably wants to be your sugar daddy. My head snapped toward him. That's not what this is. Oh really? Tate shot back. Older guy, money, offers to pay your tuition. What exactly do you think the deal is? There is no deal. There's always a deal, Tate growled. I pushed the blanket off, sitting up now too. You don't know him. I know men, Tate said bitterly. And you're being jealous. Jealous, he repeated incredulously. Yes, jealous. I'm not jealous, Tate snapped. I'm realistic. No, you're controlling, I fired back. The words hung in the air. Tate's expression darkened. You think I'm controlling? You just told me I'm not allowed to consider help paying for college. Because I'll pay for it. I blinked at him. What? I remembered the ride home with Mark that evening. The car was quiet except for the low hum of the engine and the soft sound of tires rolling over the pavement. I was holding his red jacket across my lap, running my fingers over the sleeve without really thinking about it. Mark glanced over at me once or twice like he was weighing something in his mind. Finally he spoke. Would it be too much to ask, he said casually, if I paid for your first year of college at Brown, room, board, all of it? I turned my head toward him so quickly my neck almost cracked. What? My mentor did it for me, Mark continued calmly, eyes still on the road. When I was your age, I didn't have a lot either. He stepped in and helped me out, changed my life honestly. I always told myself that if I ever got the chance, I'd repay the favor for someone else. I blinked at him, trying to process what he was saying. It's about 15 grand a year at Brown, isn't it? Mark asked. That's kind of what my acceptance letter said, I admitted. He nodded once. Well, I'd like to pay for the first year, he said. After that, we'll see whether you want to continue the arrangement or not. That's way too generous, I said quickly. Mark waved his hand as I just said something ridiculous. Nonsense, you're a talented young man. I'd like to be able to say I had a hand in helping you become accomplished, maybe even a businessman one day. He glanced at me again, smiling slightly. And before you panic, no strings, okay? I'm not your sugar daddy. I'm not going to sit on the sidelines hopping for something because I paid. That's not what this is. I shifted in my seat, still stunned. I just want to be like a mentor, he continued. Someone you can come talk to, ask questions, get advice. I have absolutely no expectations. I exhaled slowly. Tate's going to love this, I muttered with a small laugh. Mark chuckled. Don't be intimidated by him, he said. You can be whatever you want to be, Noah, and you can accept help from people who believe in you. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and pulled out a folded check. Here, he said, handing it to me, take it as a gift of friendship. I stared at it for a moment before carefully taking it and slipping it into my pocket. Thank you, Mark, I said quietly. I'll think about it. I want to talk to Tate first and ask Talia and Terrence what they think. Take all the time you need, Mark replied. Tuition isn't due for another 30 days anyway, and if that check isn't enough, just let me know. The car pulled up near Tate Street. Mark parked along the curb. I stepped out. Then leaned back into the open door and hugged him. Thank you so much, I said. See you around, kid, Mark said with a grin as he pulled away from the curb and drove off into the night. I hesitated. Mark offered to pay my first-year tuition, room and board too at Brown, I repeated. Back in the present, Tate made his feelings about Mark's offer unmistakably clear. The idea of Mark paying for my tuition at Brown University didn't sit well with him. Every mention of it tightened his jaw and darkened his expression. To Tate, it wasn't just generous financial help. It was another way for Mark to insert himself into my life. The thought of another man providing something so significant for me clearly bothered him, and he wasn't making the slightest effort to hide it. I'll pay for it. I blinked at him. What? I said I'll pay for everything, Tate said firmly. Tuition, room, board, whatever you need. You can't just decide that. I just did. No discussion, I asked. No discussion. That's ridiculous. What's ridiculous, Tate said, leaning toward me again, is you thinking you need some other guy to take care of you. I never said that. Then why are you even thinking about his offer? Because it's real help, I said, my voice rising, because my mom can't pay for Brown and you know that. I said I'll handle it. And I didn't ask you to, I shot back. The room fell silent again, both of us breathing hard. Finally Tate spoke, quieter now but far more intense. You don't belong to him, he said. I don't belong to anyone, I replied. His jaw tightened. Yeah, Tate muttered, we'll see about that. He's not just some guy I went to coffee with, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. He's my friend now, he wants to be a special person in my life. I couldn't help smiling a little as I explained it. He has experience, he knows how to make contacts and network. While I'm in school, I'll be able to meet people, get internships, maybe even line up a good job when I graduate. He might actually be really useful. I reached over and turned on the small lamp beside the bed. The soft light filled the room and I turned back toward Tate. The moment I saw his face, the smile faded. His entire face was red, hot like a tomato, and his jaw was clenched so tightly I could see the muscle jumping along the side of it. His eyes were blazing. He looked furious. You're smiling, Tate said quietly. I blinked. What? You're smiling while you talk about him. That's not. So he's your friend now, Tate cut in, his voice rising. A friend with benefits. He's kind, I said carefully. He offered. Mark's the only friend I have. Tate laughed, but there was nothing amused about it. It was sharp and bitter. Wow, that's impressive. One coffee and suddenly he's funding your life. That's not fair, I said. Noah, you met him 2 months ago. And now he's writing checks for your college, Tate snapped. Does that not sound insane to you? It's generosity, I said. People help people sometimes. Yeah, Tate shot back. And what exactly does he get out of helping you? Nothing. Tate stared at me as I just said the dumbest thing imaginable. Nothing, he repeated slowly. Right, what did he pressure you into so this check was offered? Nothing, he told me there were no strings. There are always strings. No, there aren't, I insisted. Tate pushed himself upright in the bed, the blankets shifting around him. You're not taking money from him. You don't get to decide that. Yes, I do. No, you don't, I said firmly. Tate leaned forward, eyes burning. You don't need him, he said through his teeth. And why is that, I asked. Because, Tate said, his voice low and dangerous, if anyone is paying for your life, it's going to be me. Tate suddenly threw the blankets aside and got out of bed. Without saying another word, he grabbed his bathrobe from the chair and slipped it on, tying it tightly around his waist. I watched him pace once across the room before he crouched down and started rifling through his knapsack on the floor like he was searching for something urgent. Tate, I started. He ignored me. A moment later, he pulled out a small leather checkbook. My stomach tightened. He climbed back onto the bed beside me, flipped the cover open, and began writing quickly, his pen pressing so hard into the paper I could hear the scratching sound. He filled out the date, the line, the signature, then ripped the check free with a sharp motion and shoved it into my hand. I'll pay for your entire schooling, he said flatly. Tuition, books, room, board, all accessories. I stared down at the check. The amount was $100,000 from Tate's checking account. Tate, I said slowly, you're already doing too much. Let me have a benefactor. For a second, he looked like his brain might actually explode. No, he said emphatically, his eyes were wild now. I don't want anybody paying for you unless it's me. You're too important to be exploited. He's not exploiting me, I said, my voice rising. Quiet, Tate snapped quickly. You're going to wake up our parents. I looked down again at the check in my hand and sighed. My eyebrows lifted. I sighed softly. I'll consider it, just like I'm considering Mark's. Tate's jaw tightened so hard I thought he might crack a tooth. He looked like he wanted to punch a wall. I tried to lighten the blow of Mark's generosity, but Tate was livid. I have 30 days to decide, I continued calmly. I'm going to get Talia's and Terrence's opinions, and I'm meeting with a financial advisor from Brown over the phone. Tate said nothing, but the tension rolling off him filled the entire room. When I decide which option is better for me, I finished, setting the check carefully on the nightstand, I'll make a decision. I met his eyes. And then I'll tell you. Tate's eyes flicked down to the nightstand where he thought Mark's check was lying. Let me see it, he said. No, I replied, hiding Mark's check from Tate's view. Give it to me, Noah. His hand reached out for it, but I was quicker. I grabbed the check and slipped it into the pocket of my shorts before he could touch it. Tate's hand hung there in the air for a moment. I know what you're going to do, I said. You're going to tear it up or spit on it or something equally dramatic. I am not. Yes, you are, I cut in, and I'm considering his generous offer. If I don't even consider it, that's rude. Tate's jaw flexed. Give me the check, he said slowly, enunciating every single word like he was trying not to explode. No. His eyes narrowed. Noah. I'm serious, I said. I'm not letting you destroy it. I wouldn't destroy it. You absolutely would. Tate took a step closer. Give it to me. No. For a second, it looked like he might try to reach into my pocket and take it himself. Instead, I backed toward the bedroom door. I'm going down the hall, I said, opening the door. Don't you dare. So Terrence can put it in the safe, I continued calmly. That way you can't tear it up. Tate stared at me as I had personally betrayed him. You trust my father more than me, he said bitterly. It's not about trust, I replied. It's absolutely about trust. No, I said firmly, it's about protecting my options. Tate ran a hand through his hair, packing once across the room like a caged animal. You're not taking that man's money, he muttered. I haven't decided anything yet. You don't need to decide, he snapped. I already gave you the money free without interest or expectations. And I told you, I said, stepping into the hallway, I'm considering both. Tate stood in the doorway now, glaring at me. You're unbelievable. Good night, Tate, I said. Then I walked down the hall before he could try to stop me. 10 minutes later, I came back down the hall and slipped quietly into Tate's room, shutting the door behind me. Tate was sitting on the edge of the bed, elbows resting on his knees, staring down at the floor like he was deep in thought. The lamp beside the bed cast a soft yellow light over him, and for a moment he didn't even look up when I entered. I kicked off my shoes and climbed back onto the mattress, lying down on my stomach. The second the bed shifted under my weight, Tate moved. He turned and suddenly rolled over on top of me, his weight pressing me down face first into the mattress before I could react. My face sank into the pillow as he pinned me there. Tate. What did I tell you, he said quietly, leaning over me, about taking a strange man's money? His weight kept me from moving. Tate countered with another friendly threat. I forbid you from taking that strange businessman's money, he continued. He'll try to exploit you or profit off you somehow. People don't give away money like that unless they expect something back. He's not like that, I muttered into the pillow. Tate shook his head. If you take my money, you know I wouldn't do that to you, he said. His voice softened slightly. Say you'll accept my money and put an end to this foolishness. He shifted his weight, then leaned down and pressed a kiss to my temple. You know I've never exploited you, Noe, he whispered, almost pleading now. His fingers slid into my hair, holding me gently against the mattress. Please, he murmured quietly, just take my check. Mark is a kind man, I said into the pillow, my voice slightly muffled. I've been to his apartment. He made me a BLT sandwich and was really nice. Tate froze. Then he lifted himself slightly so he could look down at me, his eyes suddenly huge. You what? I went to his apartment, I repeated. Tate stared at me as I had just confessed to walking into a burning building for fun. You went to a strange man's apartment, he said slowly, his voice rising with every word, that you barely know, and he fed you food. It's not like that, I said quickly. Tate sat up straighter on top of me, looking completely horrified. No, he said, his voice cracking with disbelief. Do you have any idea how insane that is? He offered, I said, and it was fine. Fine, Tate echoed. Yes. Don't take the money, Tate whispered. Take it as a gift from our family or I'll write a check so Mark can't do it. No, I refused. Tate exploded. I don't live in a trailer like you, Tate screamed, his face red and eyes flashing with anger. I live in an ultra-rich family, we have money, Noah, rich people. We can do some very messed up, fucked up things and you don't even know. I've heard stories, been to the parties, seen the shit they do, the things they get away with, you don't know anything. He slammed a hand on the nightstand, rattling the lamp. I know more about the world than you ever will, and you're in my house, my parents. If anything happened to you while I should have been protecting you, it wouldn't mean a thing because you have no life experience. His voice cracked with the force of it, trembling between rage and panic. Now, if you care at all about my feelings, he yelled, stepping closer, you won't make me have a heart attack listening to the stupid, reckless things you've done. I flinched back slightly as the words hit me, the weight of his jealousy and fear pressing down like a storm in the room. I looked away from Tate, letting my words come out slowly, carefully. You're a good protector, I said, and I appreciate that, but I have to make my own decisions. How my life turns out is mine and mine alone. He opened his mouth to argue, but I pressed on. Tate, you're not responsible if I happen to get into something and you can't stop it. Fine, you're there, you help, you try, but you're not responsible if I get run over crossing the street, okay? I took a breath, glancing at him. I will consider your generous offer to pay for my Brown education, but I'm also going to consider Mark's check, and sometime when he's available I'd like to bring him around so your mom can meet him. He gave me his business card and all his information. He's not a predator or a creep like you keep insinuating. He's really a nice guy. I exhaled and leaned back against the pillow. Not every guy or girl who sniffs around me or finds me interesting is trying to sell me on the side of the road. Okay? I let the words hang in the air. Then I added, a little sharper now, can I go to bed or do you want to put a homing device on me before I leave the house tomorrow? Tate froze, jaw tight, staring at me, the storm of his jealousy and fear still visible but tangled now with a hint of resignation. I rolled onto my side, closing my eyes, feeling the weight of the night settle around us. I love you, Tate, I said, my voice firm but soft enough that he could hear the care behind it. But you have to let me make my own decisions. If it turns out he's not a nice guy, I'll learn a lesson. But if he is an awesome guy, I'll have a good friend, and that's not something you can hold me down for or force me to choose the way you want me to. I took a slow breath, letting the words sink in. I'm going to take a week to think about it, ask a few people what their opinions are, and then I'll make a final decision. And no matter what comes out of your mouth, no matter how many times you try to push me up against the wall to get your own way. I paused, letting my gaze meet his. It's not going to change the decision. Mind your own fucking business, Tate, and let me get some sleep. For a moment the room was silent except for the quiet hum of the lamp. Tate's chest rose and fell rapidly, his jaw tight, eyes wide and searching. I could feel the tension in his body, the storm of jealousy and fear swirling, but I stayed still, letting him process. Finally he sank back slightly on the bed, muttering under his breath, a mixture of frustration and something softer I couldn't name. I rolled onto my side, closing my eyes, feeling the strange balance of his possessiveness and care lingering around me as the room settled into a tense quiet. I'll mind my own fucking business, Tate said after a long silence, his voice still rough with emotion. Then he looked at me again, more serious than before. If I teach you how to use a weapon and you carry it on you at all times, that's not negotiable. I opened one eye, looking back at him. If I'm going to let you go off on your own, he continued, you need to carry a weapon. You're small, compact, your body doesn't have a lot of muscle mass, you can't protect yourself unless you get lucky or outrun somebody. He swallowed, his voice lowering. And once you're in somebody's apartment or loft, it's probably too late. He stepped closer to the bed, the anger from earlier fading into something that sounded like fear. Please carry a weapon, Tate said quietly. I don't want to open the newspaper one day and find out your body was found in a dumpster, or worse, you're never found because somebody sold you somewhere in Southeast Asia. His voice cracked slightly on the last part. Promise me we'll go buy you a weapon so you can learn how to use it and protect yourself, he said. I won't be able to sleep thinking about what could happen if you don't carry something. For once, Tate wasn't shouting, he was begging. I sighed, exhausted from the fight, from the emotion, from the whole night. All right, I said quietly, I'll do it, if I can finally get some sleep. Tate let out a breath like he'd been holding it all night. He climbed into the bed behind me, the mattress shifting as he settled close. A moment later his hand moved gently through my hair, stroking it slowly. I couldn't bear it if anything bad happened to you, he murmured, his lips pressed softly against my cheek. I couldn't bear it. Within a few minutes, his breathing slowed as sleep finally pulled him under. Lying there in the quiet, I realized something. Tate wasn't angry because of the money. He was terrified that Mark was trying to become my sugar daddy, terrified someone older, richer, and more experienced might try to exploit me, or pressure me into giving them sex in exchange for help. For all his yelling and controlling behavior, one thing was clear: Tate believed he was protecting me. I was woken by the phone ringing around 10 in the morning. Groggily, I stumbled downstairs, hoping maybe it was Mark calling. Instead, I saw Tate snatch up the receiver, his whole body stiffening the moment he spoke. "Blue Residence, how can I help you?" His voice was unusually serious, clipped. I froze and my stomach sank. I had a pretty good idea who was on the other end. "No, he's not up yet. No, he won't be up later either. He's actually moved. Yes, he no longer lives here, and no, he doesn't want to talk to you again. I don't really care what he wants. Forget his number." Then slam, the receiver hit the cradle. Tate's frustration radiated off him. "Did you just tell Mark to piss off?" I asked, descending the staircase, trying to keep my tone calm. Tate froze, fumbling for a lie. "It was just a telemarketer, that's all." I narrowed my eyes. "Tate, I know when you're talking to Mark. I don't know anyone else you'd want to kill or lie to about me moving to another house." "He won't stop calling," Tate muttered, packing. We're going to have a talk about you and your friends. I don't like him," he said suddenly, defensive. "He's sniffing around you like he wants to fuck you." I laughed, a mistake, as his head snapped up, eyes wide with jealousy. "Do you think this is funny, hilarious?" he barked. I held up my hands. "Just because he wants to fuck me or give me money or watch me dance on top of his desk. I don't care. I'm not going to have sex with him if I don't want to." "Promise," Tate urged. "Tate, I'm not promising you. We're not 5-year-olds, I said. "I'm not doing a pinky promise. I have goals, a career I want. I'm not going to get sidetracked by some guy who's at least 6 years older than me. So no, I'm not going to accept his imaginary indecent proposal." "You'd do anything to go to Brown." "I know what you're doing," Noah hissed. "You're trying to get me riled up about Mark, so I'll take your offer instead," I shot back. "I'm on to you, Tate, and it's not going to work." Just then Talia's voice rang from the kitchen. "Breakfast." Noah sighed. "I'm hungry, and I am too hungry to talk about this kind of stuff while you're seething at me during breakfast." Tate and I walked downstairs to the kitchen in silence. He took the seat beside me at the breakfast table, but his glare never left my face. The tension between us lingered from upstairs, hanging heavily in the air. Talia smiled politely as she uncovered the catered breakfast, filling the room with the warm aroma of fresh eggs, pastries, bacon, and coffee. She busied herself arranging the serving dishes, either unaware of the strained silence between us or choosing not to acknowledge it. Terrence hadn't joined us yet. He was still upstairs taking a shower, leaving the rest of us alone at the table to wait for him before breakfast officially began. The moment I sat down at the breakfast table, I looked over at Talia. "Talia," I said, breaking the silence, "my friend Mark offered to pay for my first year of schooling." The words had barely left my mouth before I felt Tate's eyes lock onto me. I didn't have to look in his direction to know exactly how unhappy he was. The room seemed to grow quieter as my announcement settled over the table, and I suddenly wondered if bringing it up before everyone had even started breakfast had been a mistake. Talia sounded genuinely happy. "That's wonderful, Noah." Tate seethed silently, pressing his fork into his plate so hard it rattled, his jealousy thick enough to taste. On Monday, after calling the Brown financial advisor and getting Talia and Terrence's opinions, I made my decision, which would maximize my autonomy and agency. I was going to accept Mark's charitable donation. It would give me more control, and I thought it would be the best way to show Tate that I wasn't relying on him financially. Decisions like this were never easy in theory, but when Tate felt cornered or pushed aside, he became a scowling, green-eyed monster. At dinner, I announced my choice. I could feel the tension before I even spoke. "I called Mark this afternoon," I said, keeping my voice steady. "He's in Boston making a new deal happen." Tate scoffed but didn't say anything. I continued. "I told Mark I'm going to accept his offer to finance my first year at Brown." I didn't look at Tate. I didn't need to. I could imagine the fury radiating off his shoulders, thick and heavy. "I'm happy for you, honey," Talia said softly. "Aren't you, dear?" Terrence gave a small nod. Tate didn't say a word, but I could hear his knife squeaking across his plate, each scrape echoing louder than it should. The moment stretched on like a wire about to snap. My words had hit him like a grenade. He finally stood abruptly, muttering something I couldn't make out about a sugar daddy trying to buy his way into my pants, and stormed upstairs. I froze for a second, then heard it, his stomping shoes pounding down the hall, heavier and angrier with each step. The final bone-jarring slam of his bedroom door reverberated through the house. A picture frame of Uncle Joey fell off the wall next to the table, shattering into sharp pieces across the floor. The crash echoed, a violent punctuation to the storm of jealousy and rage that Tate left in his wake. The room was silent after that, except for the faint hiss of my own heartbeat, realizing just how much power my decisions had over him, and how little space there was between love and obsession in that house. I waited until after 9 in the evening before I went into his room. I knocked softly, but there was nothing, absolute silence. Slowly I opened the door and saw Tate sitting on the edge of his bed, hunched over his checkbook. His pen hovered in the air and his expression was twisted with calculation and fury, probably trying to decide how much he could offer me to keep Mark away from my life, or more pointedly, my pants. "Tate," I said gently, stepping inside. "Are you okay? Your mom was worried you didn't finish your meals today. I brought you a plate." "I don't want it," he snapped, his tone sharp, nasty. "Tate," I said, keeping my voice calm despite the tension in the room. "I told you I'd make a decision and you have to respect that." He scoffed, tossing the pen onto the checkbook. "I don't have to respect any damn thing," he muttered, turning his back to me, jaw tight, shoulders stiff. I walked closer, trying to keep my presence neutral, not threatening. What amount can I tempt you with, Noe?" Tate asked without looking up. "How much would it take for you to call that chomo back and tell him no?" His voice dropped low and dangerous, carrying a venom that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. I felt my anger rise. "You think this is a negotiation?" I snapped. "You think any amount is enough to change my mind?" Tate slowly lifted his head, his eyes were dark, intense. "I'm not taking no for an answer," he said flatly. "Not from you, not from anyone." Then Tate spoke again, his voice calm in a way that was somehow more unsettling than when he yelled. "I'll give you $5 million, Tate said. I blinked. "If you take my money and never see that groomer again." I froze, staring at him in disbelief. "You're not going to pay $5 million, Tate, for me to avoid my new friend?" I shouted, my voice cracking with frustration. He leaned closer, eyes blazing. $10 million, he said calmly, like it was nothing. "What? No," I yelled, stepping back. "Stop, I don't want money to come between us, it's never been about money before." Tate's jaw tightened and he tapped the pen against his checkbook. $15 million, he countered, his tone flat, as if stating a fact rather than negotiating. I felt a mix of disbelief and anger, my heart was pounding. "Tate, this isn't this isn't love, you can't put a price on me, you can't just buy control." "I'm not buying control," Tate growled, eyes dark. "I'm buying my ability to sleep at night. I want you safe. If you take that predator's money, I'll never sleep. I'll lie awake, imagining every way he could prey on you, every angle, every leverage he could use. My mind will go insane with it." Noah's chest tightened. He's serious. He'd really do that. He'd throw away millions just to protect me. But am I supposed to feel safe or trapped? His stomach churned as he realized how much Tate's fear mirrored his own. The thought of some wealthy stranger hovering near him made his pulse spike. "If I have to write a check for $30 million just to keep him from having any power over you, I will. I can make that back in a month, I don't care. I don't want an unknown variable anywhere near you, anywhere that could tip a scale in his favor. Men like that wealthy businessman don't hand out thousands just for the hell of it. They create power, they exploit power. There's no way in hell I'm leaving that to chance. Not around you, not ever." Noah swallowed hard, torn. He's right, I can't ignore it. And yet, the intensity, the obsession, it's overwhelming. It's like being seen so completely I can't breathe and still knowing he'd protect me no matter the cost. Tate sniffled, voice tight and trembling. "I don't use my power imbalance with you. I may have money, but I use that money to make the world a better place. If I can use whatever I've inherited to keep awful human beings away from you, then so be it. Now tell me a damn amount so I can go to bed." Rage simmered in his chest, hot and unrelenting, as if the thought of leaving even a single threat near Noah was unbearable. He stared at me, unflinching, a dark intensity in his gaze. "If anyone else steps into your life and they prey on you, I'll make sure they regret it, even if it costs me everything." The room felt smaller, suffocating, the checkbook on the bed suddenly more menacing than anything else. I realized just how far his jealousy and fear would go, how high he was willing to raise the stakes to keep me under his control. Tate's voice dropped low, rough with intensity but steady, almost pleading. "Friends, Noah, I don't care, boys, girls, it's meaningless. Don't let men around you who only want to get in your pants. Those are predators. I'll spend as much money in the world as I have to make sure they're not sniffing around you. You deserve to be around people who value you as a human being, not as a whole." He paused, letting the words sink in, his chest heaving slightly. I could feel the weight behind them, the anger, the fear, and the desperate protectiveness all tangled together. "You're mine in the sense that I protect you," he continued, softer now, almost vulnerable. "Nobody else gets to make you feel small or used or like your worth depends on what they can get from you. Not now, not ever." His hand brushed against my arm briefly, almost tenderly, though the tension didn't leave his body. "I know I sound insane, maybe, obsessive, but I don't care. I can't let anyone take advantage of you, not now, not ever. Do you understand me, Noah?" The room felt impossibly tight, the shadows long, and I realized just how far Tate's jealousy, his obsession, his fear of losing me went. It wasn't just anger. It was love, twisted and overwhelming, and it left no space for anyone else, even a friend like Mark. I let out a slow sigh, trying to keep my voice calm. "Mark isn't a predator, Tate. He's a nice guy. He wants to help me out." Tate's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightened, and his voice dropped low, dangerous. "Oh, I bet he does," he muttered, leaning closer, heat radiating off him. "He wants to help by sticking his fingers near your pants buckle below your belt line, Noah. I've met people like him. They only want one thing and they'll get it whether you want them to or not." I felt a shiver run down my spine at the sharpness in his tone. "Tate, I can handle myself," I said softly, trying to reason with him. He scoffed, his breath hot against my ear. "You think you can, but you don't know what's out there. I've seen what people do. I've stopped bullies before they strike, and I will stop it again if I have to." His hand brushed against mine, not gentle but possessive, and I realized the truth behind his jealousy and fear. It wasn't just anger. It was a need to protect, and to make sure no one, not even someone who might genuinely want to help me, could ever cross the line he had drawn around me. I squared my shoulders, meeting his eyes with as much firmness as I could muster. "I'm taking the money," I said, my voice steady. "I am not going to be bought, and you can put your checkbook away." Tate's face flushed with anger, his fists tightening on the bedspread. He was visibly more furious than a few seconds before, the intensity radiating off him like heat. "I'm not trying to buy you," he snapped, voice sharp and low. "I'm trying to give you an incentive to use your brain. Just take my check, that way I don't have to worry about you being exploited." I felt my patience snap. "Says the guy who wants to control me," I shouted, my words echoing off the walls. "You're so busy trying to dictate every choice I make that you think you're protecting me, but all you're doing is trying to own me." The room fell into tense silence, broken only by our heavy breathing. Tate's eyes were stormy, swirling with jealousy, fear, and rage. I could see the hurt, the panic behind his anger, but it didn't change the fact that I needed space to make my own decisions, even if he didn't like them. "I'm not your property, Tate," I said quietly, letting my words sink in. "I can make choices, I can protect myself, I can accept help from someone without you losing your mind. This isn't about being bought, it's about being smart." He didn't answer right away, but the tightness in his jaw, the flare of his nostrils, and the way he pressed his hands to the bed told me everything. I had crossed into a boundary he hadn't been ready to face, and now the storm inside him was building. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice, though it trembled with frustration and exhaustion. "Tate," I said, holding his gaze, "I'm tired of your paranoia where you believe that everybody is trying to hurt me. There are nice people out there, nice girls, guys, adults, people who actually want to help me, not take advantage of me." He opened his mouth to argue, but I pressed on, unable to take any more drama from Tate. I try to explain it to Tate to calm him down before he has a tantrum. "Just because a guy finds me physically attractive or might want to fuck me doesn't mean it's a bad thing. I'm not going to do it anyway. I told you I'm straight." I lie. I took a step closer, voice firmer, more insistent. "Let me live my life, Tate. If I need your opinion, your protection, I'll ask for it. But this," I gestured between us toward the checkbook, "this is my boundary. Put away your checkbook, or I'm leaving for good." The room went silent, heavy with tension. His jaw clenched, his fists tightened at his sides, and his chest rose and fell with rapid, shallow breaths. I could see the storm inside him, the jealousy, the fear, the obsession, but I couldn't let it control me anymore. The checkbook lay between us, a symbol of control he desperately wanted, but I didn't move. I waited for him to make the choice, and for the first time it felt like it might actually be my decision that mattered. Tate was still holding his checkbook as he tossed it onto the mattress next to me. I sank down, letting out a long sigh. "Fine," I muttered. "Then I won't write the check, you do it." Tate leaned closer, eyes blazing. "I said whatever amount you want, put it down, sign it, take it, that way you can't say I tried to control you, it's your choice, and it's the amount you want." I stared at him, heart pounding, caught between the absurdity of the gesture and the depth of his obsession. He's trying so hard to protect me, but I feel the weight of every dollar, every intention, every fear pressing down, and somehow, I trust him anyway. Tate sighed, waiting for me to finally do the right thing for once. "Every dollar I give you," he said, voice tight, almost cracking, "is not control, it's not manipulation, it's not an incentive. Every decimal point, every single dollar, it shows how much I love you. My money, Noah, is your money. If you ever need anything, my checkbook is in my backpack. Write whatever amount you need and take it. It's not theft, it's a gift, not a loan. You don't have to ask any amount anytime for any reason, I don't care." I lay back on his mattress, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of the checkbook next to me. He really means it, but it's almost suffocating how much he wants to protect me. And I want to trust him, I do, but it makes my chest ache feeling the force of that love pressing down on me. "When somebody loves someone," Tate continued, eyes locking onto mine, "they give them access to being okay. If you need money, you can always go to an ATM and take whatever you want. As long as I know you're safe and happy, I don't care how much you take. You taking my money means you love me, and when you don't take it, I feel like you don't." My hands fidgeted in my lap. He's raw and desperate and terrifyingly sincere. Part of me wants to argue, to tell him I love him without needing a checkbook as proof. But part of me knows this is exactly how he shows love, and I can't fight it without hurting him, or myself. I shifted slightly, feeling the mattress dip under my weight. He's obsessed, jealous, maybe even unhinged. And yet, every word, every threat, every offer, it's wrapped in this undeniable care. I'm terrified of him, and yet I want him closer than ever. Tate's hand hovered over the checkbook, then dropped, fingers curling into a fist. "Now, tell me a damn amount, Noah, whatever you want. Put it down, sign it, take it. That way you can't say I tried to control you. It's your choice. The amount is yours, my money is yours." Noah exhaled slowly, feeling the tension in the room, in my chest, in my own mind. It's insane, it's suffocating, and yet, I feel safer here than I've ever felt anywhere in the world. Even if it's terrifying, even if it's too much, I trust him, I have to. I straightened, my voice calm but cutting, trying to make every word land. "I've never asked for a dime of your money, Tate. I don't want your money, I just want to be close, that's all." I let a pause hang in the tense room, letting him absorb it. "If at the end of the fall we go to separate sides of the US to go to school, fine, that's life. We'll connect through letters, phone calls, whatever works. But I'm done putting up with your paranoia." Tate opened his mouth, probably ready to argue, but I cut him off. "Go see a shrink, Tate, seriously. You need someone to talk to about why you think everyone wants to hurt me, control me, or take advantage of me. I can't fix that, I can only set my boundaries." My gaze didn't waver, even as his jaw tightened and his fists clenched. I could feel the fire behind his eyes, hurt, jealousy, obsession, but I refused to let it dictate my choices. "I love you, Tate, but I'm not your property. I won't live my life under your fear. Respect me and respect my decisions, or I walk." The checkbook sat unopened on the bed, useless between us now. For the first time, the decision wasn't his, it was mine. Tate's hands tightened on the edge of the bed, knuckles white, his chest rising and falling fast. You're talking about flying away like some damn bird," he said, voice rough, almost breaking. "Do you even realize what that means to me, Noah, to me?" I looked at him, trying to meet the storm in his eyes without backing down. "I know, Tate," I said softly, "and it hurts me too, but I can't let my life be ruled by fear or by you. I have to make my own choices." He shook his head, jaw tight, his voice dropping to a growl. "Choices? You think I don't know what's out there? You think anyone else could care for you as I do? You think Mark or some stranger is going to treat you right? No, Noah, they want one thing and they'll get it. I won't let it happen. I can't let it happen." "I know you want to protect me," I said, keeping my tone calm, "and I love that you do. But there's a difference between protecting me and owning me, Tate. I can't be yours to control. You have to trust me even if it terrifies you."